I'd like to welcome Rajiv Shah, president of the Rockefeller Foundation, who's here to discuss the program that you just heard about, an action plan for improving testing capacity here in the United States and potentially around the world. Raj, you have said we envision an America where everyone who needs a test can get one, and testing for COVID-19 has been a struggle here in the United States. Tell me about the gaps that you saw in the country's ability to ramp up testing and then implement it, and what role the foundation is playing in addressing that need.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Alice, and thank you to your participants and to the TIME team for putting today together. This is a moment where we all need hope, and we need to see that there is a better way out for our country, for our economy, and for the working families in the United States. And right now, the Rockefeller Foundation believes that way out is fundamentally about testing. We're losing $300 to $400 billion per month in lost GDP output. And while that's a big number, the real consequence is that 73% of Americans have already reported a significant and permanent loss of income. And 50% of Americans are in a position of choosing between their lives and their livelihoods, in the sense that they have to continue to work in order to make ends meet during this very critical time and take real risks in doing so. Really, the only way our country is going to deal with COVID over the next 12 to 18 months before there is a widespread vaccine available and administered is going to be making sure there's broad, ubiquitous testing available for every American, and especially for groups of asymptomatic people who either need to be in the essential workforce or have had some known contact with someone who's been COVID positive. And right now, the guidelines are very, very restricted. They're restricted by the fact that America has probably one of the lowest levels of testing availability around the world for its population.
Why is that? Why has America had this delay in being able to test more people? We've seen smaller countries really ramp up their testing capacity. Where do you really see the gaps? Is it an issue of technology? Is it an issue of infrastructure from the healthcare system? Is it an issue of regulations that prevent commercial labs and academic labs from picking up the mantle? Where did you see the gaps, and how does your action plan address them?
Well, the gaps are all of the above, as you mentioned, and the Rockefeller Foundation was able to bring together scientists, industry leaders, listen to manufacturers in particular who are now tasked with scaling up to levels they've really never produced test kits at. And we worked with cities and states around the country to develop a clear action plan. The plan is the 1-3-30 plan. Right now, we're stuck at about 1 million tests per week. We've been at that level for about 3 weeks. We think we can get to 3 million tests a week in just 8 weeks' time, and that would be transformational for helping economies reopen across the country. And the way we would do that is to bring on board the roughly 2/3 of molecular testing capacity in America that resides in small labs, in research labs, in university labs, that could be processing more tests, but frankly are not a part of the Centers for Disease Control surveillance and diagnostic network, and are usually not connected to an information system that allows for people to send them requests to process tests and allows them to send results back to those who need them. So that we see as a very solvable problem. We've proposed some very specific insurance reimbursement changes. And we've asked insurance companies come together, say, we're in a national crisis. Let's wipe away the distinctions between an in-network or out-of-network lab, provide a consistent flat rate reimbursement for every test that's completed, use every bit of lab capacity, whether it's at a university or in a corporate lab, and let's quickly get from 1 million to 3 million, which we can do in the next 8 weeks.
And how do we get from 3 million to 30 million? What will that take?
Well, that's going to take a lot more of a transformational change. We're going to need some new technologies. We're starting to see them hit the market and hit the FDA approval process for both point of service tests that can be administered by others and home kits that can be distributed throughout people's homes and used at home. And once we get those types of technologies online, we believe it's important to also get states and cities to come together with the federal government and pool their procurement and their purchasing capacity and project it out over a longer period of time. This is a very disaggregated market, the laboratory supplies market, and you have all these labs buying for short-term, small-scale purchase orders. And in light of that, it's going to be very, very hard to get the companies who manufacture these tests to make 10, 20, 50 times what they're currently making. That requires real investments in manufacturing capacity, an 8-week to 3-month timeline for them to build up the capacity to start producing at that much higher level. So this is actually a playbook that those of us that have worked in global health have used previously. We pooled together the purchasing power of 70 countries around the world and bought vaccines for low-income countries. And over many, many years, that saved 6 million child lives. I use we very broadly, but we pulled together the purchasing authority of countries that have been ravaged by HIV/AIDS, and together with the United Nations and the Clinton Foundation actually purchased long-term, large-scale supplies of antiretrovirals and saved millions of lives. We can do this in America for the laboratory supply market, but it's going to take leadership and it's going to take partnership. And that's why the Rockefeller Foundation issued a clear roadmap, and we're putting tens of millions of dollars behind its implementation so that it's not just a report, but it's actually a platform that cities and states can use to go ahead and access larger volumes of testing supplies over longer periods of time.
And I know that's a roadmap that many cities and states are already looking toward. Raj, thank you so much for the work that you and the foundation have been doing to ramp up U.S. testing capacity. In just a few moments, my colleague Brian Bennett will be joined by Senator Amy Klobuchar. But first, before that, we wanted to bring you behind the scenes to last week's Time cover, which has the same title as today's event, Finding Hope. And I know you will find hope and inspiration from the stories of the heroes who are on the front lines fighting this coronavirus.